You did not lose your strength overnight. You traded it away in small, unnoticeable moments. You built a life that looks flawless on paper. The salary is secure, the title is respected, and society nods in approval at your so-called success. But inside there is a quiet, heavy exhaustion. You sit in the modern office, staring at the screen, feeling like a ghost in your own life. You keep calling it peace, but it is really emotional surrender. You have walked into a golden cage, locked the door from the inside, and handed over the key in exchange for comfort. The truth is, you are not ungrateful, and you are not broken. You are simply ignoring the deepest anchor of your nature. A concept known as a career anchor. Today, we will uncover the invisible force that makes perfect situations feel like prisons, focusing on the anchor of autonomy. We will explore why your need for freedom is not a childish rebellion, but a fundamental requirement for your soul. Once you understand this, the confusion will stop and the real work will begin. There is a psychological mechanism that operates beneath the surface of every career decision you make. It is your career anchor, the undeniable core of your professional identity, a concept explored by organizational psychologist Edgar Schein. For years, you have been taught to chase stability, to climb the ladder, and to measure your worth by the weight of your paycheck. But there is a fracture in this modern narrative. When your internal anchor demands freedom, forcing yourself into a rigid structure creates a silent, tearing friction. Look at the reality of your daily behavior. You wake up with a heavy chest, dreading the microscopic control of managers who track your time rather than your value. You sit in endless meetings, feeling your creative energy drain away into useless corporate jargon. This is the cost of ignoring your anchor. Your identity becomes blurred. You start believing you are lazy or unmotivated, when in reality, you're just a wild creature trying to survive in a sterile, artificial environment. The shift begins with a brutal but necessary realization. You must stop trying to fix yourself to fit the cage. Your resistance to micromanagement is not a flaw. It is a sign of high internal standards. Acknowledge that your highest performance requires oxygen, space, and trust. By recognizing your need for autonomy, you stop fighting your own nature. You reclaim your self-respect and prepare to dismantle the structures that have kept you small. And once you understand this, you begin to see something deeper. Society presents a single linear path to success, moving upward. The promotion, the corner office, the expanding team. But this upward path is often a beautifully disguised trap. For the individual anchored in autonomy, rising in the ranks rarely means more freedom. Instead, it means more bureaucracy, heavier oversight, and less time doing the actual work that once brought satisfaction. The reward for competence is often a heavier chain. Consider the story of Clara, a brilliant designer who was offered the ultimate promotion. It came with the title, the money, and the prestige. But it also came with endless reports and suffocating oversight. Taking it would mean trading her quiet hours of deep work for a life of managing others' expectations. The emotional cost of this trade is devastating. You become a manager of systems instead of a master of your craft, losing the very essence of what made you excellent. The practical internal shift here is learning to redefine elevation. True growth does not always mean moving up a predetermined ladder. Sometimes it means stepping off it entirely to walk horizontally into wider, open spaces. Protect your craft. Learn to view promotions objectively, calculating the cost to your freedom rather than just the addition to your bank account. The next thing you must understand is quieter, but more dangerous. Comfort is the most insidious enemy of the autonomous mind. A high-paying job that demands nothing but your absolute conformity is a golden cage. It offers physical safety while slowly starving your spirit. The bars are made of bonuses, benefits, and social status, making it incredibly difficult to explain to anyone on the outside why you're suffocating on the inside. You're told you should be grateful, which only deepens the internal shame. You see this in the way your evenings and weekends are spent recovering rather than living. The mental exhaustion of pretending to care about artificial metrics leaves you with nothing for your own life. You become dependent on the very system that drains you, afraid to leave because the golden bars have convinced you that the wilderness outside is too dangerous. This is emotional dependence masked as financial security, and it is destroying your drive. Breaking this pattern requires a hard look at what you truly value. You must separate your self-worth from your salary. Begin by setting strict internal boundaries. Decide what aspects of your mind and time are simply not for sale, regardless of the price offered. Freedom always carries a price of uncertainty, but it is a price paid in your own currency. This is where the real change begins, where the illusion of safety shatters. There is a specific kind of damage done by micromanagement. It is not just annoying, it is an assault on your competence. When you are anchored in autonomy, being told exactly how to do a task you already master feels like an insult. It communicates a fundamental lack of trust. This environment breeds a unique kind of apathy, transforming passionate creators into cynical clock watchers who do the bare minimum just to survive the day. The consequences seep into your identity. You stop offering innovative ideas because you know they will be suffocated by endless approval processes. You learn to silence your intuition. The emotional cost is a profound sense of self-betrayal. Every time you nod in agreement with a process you know is inefficient, just to keep the peace, you chip away at your own integrity. You trade your voice for a quiet, miserable existence in the shadows. To rebuild, you must start practicing quiet defiance through absolute excellence. Take complete ownership of the spaces you can still control. Deliver results that are so undeniable they render micromanagement completely obsolete. Shift your focus away from seeking permission and direct it entirely toward seeking mastery. When your work speaks with undeniable authority, the noise of external oversight naturally begins to fade, and slowly something inside you starts to return. People anchored in autonomy are not designed to fit into existing puzzles. They are meant to design the board. The fundamental conflict arises when you try to force a creator's spirit into an assembly line. You do not just want to complete a task, you want to define the purpose of the task. The modern workplace rarely allows this, leading to a deep, agonizing feeling of wasted potential, as if you are reading a script written by a stranger. Look at the hours you waste daydreaming about building your own systems, starting your own venture, or simply working in absolute isolation. This is not distraction. This is your core nature crying out for expression. When you suppress this, you become irritable, detached, and deeply unhappy. The energy that should be used to build your empire is turned inward, transforming into anxiety and a quiet, simmering resentment toward the world. The solution is to begin laying your own bricks, even while standing inside their walls. Start treating yourself as an independent entity, a consultant to your own life. Direct your energy towards side projects, learn to define your own metrics of success, and prepare the foundation for your eventual exit. You are not a cog, you are the architect. But peace does not come from escaping life. It comes from facing it differently. Time is the only resource you can never earn back, yet you give it away with terrifying ease. When you suppress your need for independence, you stop treating time as the canvas of your life and start treating it as a currency to be traded for survival. You sit in traffic, you sit in meetings, you sit at a desk, trading the most vital hours of your day for a sense of security that never quite feels real. The tragedy becomes visible when you look at how you spend your evenings. You do not use your free hours to build, to create, or to explore. You use them to recover. Your weekends are reduced to a brief, frantic attempt to rest before the cycle begins again. You are not living. You are simply managing your own depletion. This is what happens when your daily labor does not align with your internal anchor. You must stop viewing your time as something to endure. The shift begins when you reclaim ownership of your hours. Stop asking how much a job pays, and start asking how much of your life it consumes. Independence is not just about choosing your work, it is about choosing your time, and this realization leads to a heavier, more physical truth. You became tired long before your body did. There's a specific modern kind of exhaustion that comes from standing completely still while your mind runs at full speed in the wrong direction. When your autonomy is stripped away, your energy has nowhere to flow. It pools inside you, turning into a heavy, stagnant weight. You are exhausted, but you have gone nowhere. Look at the reality of a day spent under someone else's rigid control. You stare at screens, you move digital files, you answer messages, and by the end of the day, you feel as though you have been carrying stones. This is the exhaustion of friction. It takes an immense amount of psychological energy to force yourself to care about things that contradict your fundamental nature. It is the cost of constant self-betrayal. You thought you needed more motivation, you needed less noise. The cure for this exhaustion is not more rest. The cure is aligned action. When you work on your own terms, even the hardest labor feels light because the friction is gone. You must start directing your energy rather than just letting it drain away. But this is only the surface. In an environment built on hierarchy, you are trained to outsource your self-worth. When you surrender your autonomy, you hand over the right to judge your own value. You begin to look upward for validation, waiting for a manager or a system to tell you that you have done well. This is a subtle, invisible leash, and it keeps you incredibly docile. The emotional cost of this dependence is severe. Your entire mood becomes tethered to an email, a performance review, or a passing comment in a hallway. You start molding your personality to become more acceptable, softening your edges, and hiding your true opinions. You become a watered-down version of yourself, terrified of disappointing the very structure that is holding you captive. This is not discipline. This is emotional surrender. To rebuild your strength, you must sever the cord of external validation. Your value is not determined by their metrics. You must learn to judge your own work with a cold, objective eye, independent of their applause or their criticism. The only approval that matters is your own. And once you take that back, the silence becomes deafening. When the pain of living out of alignment becomes too sharp, the human mind looks for anesthesia. If you cannot escape the cage, you learn to numb the part of you that knows you are trapped. You silence the internal compass that points toward freedom, convincing yourself that this quiet misery is just what adult life is supposed to be. The painful truth is simple. You use endless scrolling, cheap entertainment, and mindless consumption, not because you enjoy them, but because they turn off the voice in your head. Every time you distract yourself from the dissatisfaction of your career, you are pushing your true nature further into the dark. You are surviving, but you are slowly extinguishing your own fire. Stop running from the discomfort. Let the dissatisfaction burn. That quiet frustration is not your enemy. It is the last remaining signal of your true identity trying to wake you up. Sit with the uncomfortable reality of where you are. Use that pain as the fuel to plan your exit, rather than drowning it in distraction. This is where the real change begins. Creativity requires oxygen, chaos, and the freedom to fail. Micromanagement requires predictability, order, and absolute compliance. The two cannot coexist. When you force a creative, autonomous mind into a system that demands constant reporting and adherence to rigid processes, you do not just kill the project, you kill the mind. You can feel the damage when you sit down to work and your mind goes completely blank. You stop having bold ideas because you know they will be rejected by the bureaucracy. You stop taking risks. The vibrant, capable person you used to be becomes a simple machine, executing commands without passion. You have traded your brilliance for compliance. Read that again, slowly. You traded your brilliance for compliance. Reclaiming your mind means fiercely protecting your mental space. You must start building small, completely independent projects in the shadows, where no one has the authority to tell you what to do. You must remind yourself what it feels like to create without permission. And slowly, the inner order will begin to form. The first step toward reclaiming your mind is realizing you have been playing the wrong game entirely. You have allowed external artificial systems to define what a successful day looks like. They measure your value in hours logged, tasks completed, and physical presence at a desk. But when your true nature demands autonomy, these shallow metrics are completely irrelevant to your actual output. You're forcing a dynamic, creative process into a rigid industrial mold, and it is quietly destroying your drive. As long as you measure your worth by their standards, you will always feel inadequate. You will push yourself to the point of exhaustion just to prove you're working, even when the work is meaningless. You become trapped in a performative loop, optimizing for visibility rather than actual progress or deep impact. This constant need to prove your productivity to someone else drains the very energy you need to do meaningful work. You must ruthlessly define your own metrics of success, decide exactly what a productive day means to you, completely independent of corporate expectations. Focus on deep work, skill acquisition, and the integrity of your output. When you govern your own standard of excellence, external judgment loses its grip on your mind. You stop being an employee, looking for an evaluation, and become a craftsman demanding quality. The next step is building the walls to protect this new standard. A boundary is not an aggressive act, it is an absolute act of self-preservation. The modern professional world is designed to consume your attention and your energy until there is nothing left. When you lack internal boundaries, you become a dumping ground for the urgency of other people. You say yes to every demand in every meeting because you have completely forgotten how to guard your own mental space. You let the noise in. The cost of this openness is incredibly steep. You find yourself answering messages late at night, letting their artificial chaos bleed into your quiet peace. Your identity becomes enmeshed with your constant availability. You believe that being accessible at all hours makes you valuable, but in reality, it only makes you exhausted and easily replaced. You are sacrificing your deeply needed autonomy for the fragile illusion of importance. The shift requires drawing cold, firm lines in the sand. You must decide exactly when you are available and when you are completely unreachable. Stop apologizing for taking up space and protecting your time. Silence your notifications. Let people wait for your response. Your focus is your most valuable asset, and it must be guarded with absolute ruthlessness against those who wish to steal it. This is where the real change begins. Defiance does not always look like an argument or a loud resignation. The most powerful form of rebellion is completely silent. It is the conscious, calculated decision to stop caring about the artificial urgencies of the system. You do not need to announce your departure from their game. You simply stop playing by their rules. You withdraw your emotional investment while continuing to deliver exactly what is required, nothing more. Most people mistake this silent detachment for quitting. They think that if you're not visibly stressed, you're not working hard enough. But chronic stress is a sign of poor design, not of dedication. When you stop reacting emotionally to every minor crisis at work, people will notice. They might call you detached or uncommitted, but what they are really seeing is a man who can no longer be controlled by panic or artificial deadlines. Embrace the quiet power of non-reaction. Do your job with absolute competence, but refuse to give them your soul in the process. Keep your inner world strictly off-limits to their chaos. When you master this silent detachment, the golden cage loses its psychological power over you. You are physically present, but mentally, you have already walked out the door. And once you understand this, you begin to see something deeper. You cannot build an authentic, self-directed life if you are terrified of disappointing people. The path to autonomy is paved with the unmet expectations of those who want you to remain predictable. Your managers, your peers, and the system itself will always prefer the version of you that complies simply because it makes their lives easier. They want you in the box because it keeps their world orderly. The fear of letting them down keeps you paralyzed in place. You swallow your words, you accept the extra workload, and you smile through the quiet frustration. You trade your own self-respect just to keep the peace and avoid a difficult conversation. But a peace built on self-betrayal is just a quiet war inside your own mind. You are slowly destroying your own foundation to keep everyone else feeling comfortable. You must develop the capacity to tolerate their disappointment without flinching. Let them be frustrated by your new boundaries. Let them be confused by your lack of ambition for their corporate ladder. Their emotional reaction to your freedom is not your responsibility. Your only obligation is to your own truth and your own nature. This discomfort is the mandatory price of admission to your independence. Autonomy is completely useless without the ability to direct your own attention. A free mind that cannot focus is just a different kind of slave. You have been conditioned by constant notifications and endless fragmented tasks to have a fractured attention span. Your mind jumps frantically from one emergency to another, never settling deeply into anything of true, lasting value. You are busy, but you're not effective. This scattered, overstimulated state keeps you weak and easily managed. You cannot build your own empire or design your escape if you cannot concentrate for more than 10 unbroken minutes. The system loves a distracted mind because a distracted mind cannot plan an exit strategy. As long as you are endlessly reacting to the noise they create, you will never have the clarity to secure your own true independence. Rebuilding your strength requires intentional, deeply uncomfortable silence. You must train yourself to sit with a single, difficult task, ignoring the modern urge to seek a quick distraction. Reclaim your ability to do deep, meaningful work entirely without supervision or external pressure. This restored focus is the sharpest weapon you will use to cut the final chains. But this is only the surface. Independence is frequently misunderstood as isolation or mere rebellion against authority. But true independence is something far quieter and much more profound. It is the absolute stabilization of your internal environment, regardless of the chaos or demands happening outside of you. When you finally align your professional life with your deep anchor of autonomy, you stop fighting against the external structure. You no longer need to rebel because you simply outgrow the need for their permission. The psychological shift is immense. You no longer walk into a room looking for validation or fearing the micromanagement of a superior. You enter as an equal, a sovereign individual offering a specific value in exchange for a specific resource. The desperation evaporates completely because you have defined your own boundaries and your own metrics. The corporate hierarchy loses its power to intimidate you. You are playing a completely different game. You must cultivate this sovereign mindset long before you actually leave the cage. Start viewing your current employment as a temporary partnership rather than a permanent identity. Treat your skills as capital and your time as your ultimate asset. By shifting from the mindset of an employee to the mindset of a free agent, you begin to act with a steady, unbreakable confidence. And once you understand this, you begin to see something deeper. There's an immense, undeniable power in moving through your life in absolute silence. When you stop announcing your plans, your frustrations, and your boundaries, you stop giving the system a target. The need to complain is just another symptom of powerlessness. It is an attempt to seek comfort from the very structure that is suffocating you. True power does not complain, it simply observes, plans, and executes. executes. When you operate quietly, people project their own expectations onto you. They assume you are compliant because you're no longer arguing. But underneath that calm surface, you are steadily building your escape velocity. The emotional energy you used to waste on workplace drama or defending your ego is now entirely channeled into your own mastery. You become dangerous in the best possible way, unpredictable and highly focused. Train yourself to speak less and deliver more. When you're confronted with unnecessary control or bureaucratic friction, do not react with anger. React with cold, efficient competence. Let your results speak so loudly that your physical presence becomes almost irrelevant. This silent execution builds a fortress around your mind that no manager can penetrate. The next thing you must understand is quieter but more dangerous. The traditional model of success demands that you trade your hours directly for money, trapping you in a perpetual cycle of labor. But a mind anchored in autonomy cannot survive this linear trap. To truly honor your need for freedom, you must transition from a life of labor to a life of leverage. You must build systems, skills, and assets that do the heavy lifting for you, allowing your physical time to remain entirely your own. When you rely solely on your daily presence to generate income, you are always one step away from returning to the cage. This vulnerability keeps your decisions rooted in fear rather than strategy. You compromise your integrity because you cannot afford to walk away. The lack of leverage forces you to accept toxic environments and micromanagement simply because the financial chain is wrapped too tightly around your neck. Begin constructing your leverage quietly, whether it is acquiring a rare, highly compensated skill, building an independent stream of income, or creating deep professional networks that bypass the traditional hierarchy. Your goal is not just to make money, it is to buy back your freedom. Once your survival is no longer strictly tied to their approval, you become truly untouchable. This is where the real change begins. Unshakable internal order is the ultimate defense against an overstimulating, demanding world. The reason the golden cage felt so suffocating was not just the external control, but the lack of internal structure to push back against it. When your mind is chaotic, you are easily swayed by the demands of others. You must become a master of your own internal architecture, establishing routines and standards that are absolutely non-negotiable. This is the paradox of freedom that most people never understand. True autonomy is not the absence of rules. It is the presence of rules that you have chosen for yourself. Without self-imposed discipline, freedom quickly degrades into aimlessness and anxiety. You will find yourself just as exhausted by your own lack of direction as you were by the micromanagement of your boss. Unstructured freedom is merely another form of paralysis. You must become your own harshest judge and your own most reliable leader. Wake up with purpose, protect your focus, and hold yourself to a standard of excellence that far exceeds what anyone else would ask of you. When you conquer your own impulses, the external world loses its ability to dictate your emotional state. You stand firm, rooted deeply in your own quiet authority, and slowly, something inside you starts to return. The highest level of professional and personal power is the absolute freedom to walk away. It is the quiet, internal knowing that you do not need the situation more than the situation needs you. This is the ultimate realization of your autonomy anchor. You no longer make decisions from a place of scarcity or fear of losing status. You choose your path simply because it aligns with the deepest, truest parts of your nature. When you reach this point, you look back at the perfect job, the prestigious title, and the golden cage, and you feel absolutely nothing but calm indifference. You recognize that what society calls success is often a beautifully decorated trap for the spirit. You have stopped explaining your choices to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You have traded the illusion of security for the profound reality of self-ownership. Hold on to this quiet confidence. The world will continuously attempt to pull you back into conformity, offering heavier chains disguised as grander rewards. But you now possess the clarity to see the hook beneath the bait. Stand tall in your independence. Your life is no longer a reaction to the demands of a broken system. It is a deliberate, masterful creation of your own design, but peace does not come from escaping life. It comes from facing it differently. You have journeyed through the painful realization of the golden cage, uncovering the hidden anchor of autonomy that dictates your true professional fulfillment. The exhaustion, the quiet suffering, and the internal friction were never signs of your weakness. They were the desperate signals of a mind rejecting its own captivity. You now understand that true power lies not in climbing a ladder built by someone else, but in the silent, disciplined construction of your own path. It is the conscious choice to stop trading your deep internal freedom for comfortable compliance. The path forward requires a quiet defiance, unshakable internal order, and the immense courage to disappoint the expectations of the crowd. You are no longer a passenger in an artificial structure. You are the sovereign architect of your own time. The cage is open and the key was always in your own hand. If this journey brought you clarity and you are ready to continue building a life of profound internal strength, subscribe to this channel. The real work has just begun.